post. He's out. William on the drive. Pull up. Got it!
A grand slam for Masters. Witherspoon in the corner, on the way and good.
More big hit in him. A bomb.
Shapen, wide open, caught across the middle. Thompson, touchdown! Mississippi State, the national champions.
Wrap it in maroon and white.
Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Bulldog Breakdown presented by the Bulldog Student Sports Network. My name is Connor Davis, back as your host. Alongside me, my co-host, Ty Golmon. And last week, we had our first episode. I think it turned out great. How do you feel about, how the episode turns out? Are you excited for the season, for the rest of the football season, and to continue doing and pushing out these Bulldog Breakdown episodes?
Yeah, I'm excited. We got a lot of good feedback, and it was very fun to make the episode. The entire process was fun, so this is something we all enjoyed doing, so very excited for the future of our show.
Well, at the beginning of last episode, you wanted to cover sports that weren't volleyball, soccer, and football, so we're going to do it again this week. So go ahead and hit me with whatever we have for this past week in, golf and other sports. So go ahead and hit me with what you got.
So bear with me. I've got it all on my paper here, so I'm going to read it off for you. We'll start with men's golf. They finished 9th last week at the Fallen Oak Collegiate Invitational. That was the final event of the fall season. Women's golf last week competed in the Alley, or this week rather, they're competing in the Alley, which is at Old Waverly in West Point. That'll be the final event of the fall season. We move now to women's tennis. We have 2 Lady Dogs competing in Norman, Oklahoma this week at the ITF Women's 35. All right, now we'll move to cross country. Mississippi State placed 11th out of 38 as a team last week at the pre-national invite hosted by Missouri. This marked the end of the regular season for MSU, finishing 1st, 2nd, 1st, and 11th in their 4 events. They'll compete in the SEC Cross Country Championships next week in Knoxville. For women's basketball, there's an exhibition on Sunday against Union. That is going to be in the Humphrey Coliseum at 7 o'clock. Free admission, so make sure you go out and see the Lady Bulldogs on Sunday. Their first regular season game is on November 3rd against Davidson, at the Humphrey Coliseum. Men's basketball has an exhibition as well on Sunday. It's not at the Humphrey Coliseum. They go to Houston, which will be a tough opponent to play against. They have that on Sunday. Their first regular season game is against North Alabama on November 5th. That will be at the Humphrey Coliseum. For softball, they have a Fall World Series Game 3 on Friday at 6 p.m. That'll be at News Park. I believe that's probably free admission. And then baseball split 2 7-inning scrimmages on this previous Saturday against Florida State. They won Game 1 4-1 and lost Game 2 5-2. Their next scrimmage is on November 1st against Louisiana Tech. That'll be at Dudy Noble Field, and that'll wrap up their fall scrimmages.
Well, thank you for the other sports. Let's start with our main sport, volleyball. You beat South Carolina this past weekend. We talked about you had a double whammy when it came to conference games for volleyball. You beat South Carolina, and you lost to Georgia. Kind of give me your overall thoughts against South Carolina and Georgia. They were both away games, so you didn't have any volleyball action here in Starkville. What could you take away from those volleyball matches?
Well, South Carolina, you won the match 3-0, dominated that match. The score tells you everything you need to know. A .305 hit percentage for Mississippi State compared to South Carolina's .087. Talked about last week cleaning up errors. Only 11 errors for South Carolina, only 11 errors for Mississippi State in the ball game against South Carolina. You had plenty of production from around the roster. You did what you had to do. I mentioned last week you had to take care of business to get to Athens, and you did exactly that. So good win for Mississippi State against South Carolina. Then we go to Athens. You fall to the Georgia Bulldogs 3-2. Took it all the way to 5 sets, lost the final set 16-14, It was close for the entire match, Connor. What I thought is you kind of learned the same thing that we thought going into the match. These were two evenly matched teams, and we saw that play out close throughout the entire match, and Georgia just got the better hand. I thought State had multiple opportunities to capitalize on some mistakes that Georgia made, and they just couldn't do it. I thought Georgia played really well defensively in the game. When they did make those mistakes on the offensive end, I thought they did better. I thought they did well cleaning some things up defensively. One player I wanted to talk about too that really helped us in the last couple in the fourth set and really the fifth set. State got down in that fifth set. It got down big, and then they were able to battle back. Lindsey Mangelson was really good for the Bulldogs, the freshman sensation. Was really good for Mississippi State, ultimately helped them fight back and force the game to be won by 2, which it was 16-14 to Georgia. Overall, to encapsulate that Georgia game, 45 ties and 16 lead changes in the entire match. It was just back and forth the entire way. Really competitive. Sad we didn't come out on the winning end of things, but just kind of showed you these are two very similar teams. And if we played Georgia, if we played Georgia again, I think, and maybe if it was at home, I think maybe it would go in Mississippi State's favor.
You'll definitely hear her name throughout the season a lot, and this was super competitive. You're right. If we look at kind of the box score, UC State going to 26 or 24, they win the first set. Then you go 25-22 Georgia, 25-23 Georgia, 27-25 State, and then the last set was super competitive. It went 16-14. So Georgia, you pushed them to 16 points. Kind of a big deal if you're Mississippi State, and
well, especially for being down the way they were.
Going into that set
and being able to force it all the way for the match to be won by 2.
Well, being able to score 27 in the fourth set, I think that's a fantastic showing of what you could do on the volleyball court. But if we look at your overall record for the year, you're 14-4 overall. You're 1-2 against ranked opponents. But if we talk about the double whammy of games that we have this weekend, 2 more ranked opponents come up to add to the docket for this weekend of volleyball, both conference games at home. So you'll have some volleyball action here in Starkville. Number 3, Kentucky on Friday, and the number 17th ranked Tennessee Volunteers on Sunday. Both teams with 14 wins on the season. Super difficult games. Let's talk about Kentucky, 14-2, 7-0 in the conference, and Tennessee's 14-3, 5-2 in the conference. Let's look at this Kentucky game in particular. I want to talk about how well Kentucky has fared against ranked teams this season. To be ranked number 3 in the country, you have to do a lot of work. You have to do a lot of work to get there. Number 1, Nebraska was your first ranked opponent of the season. You lost 3-2. Then you play the 5th ranked Penn State Nittany Lions. You win 3-0, so you sweep them. 7th ranked Pitt, you lost. You got swept in that one 3-0. Number 10 ranked SMU Mustangs, you won 3-1. Then you play the number 3rd Louisville team, you won 3-2. Number 9 Texas A&M Aggies, you won 3-1. You are, if you're Tennessee, you're 1-2 against ranked opponents. You haven't had as much ranked competition as you had for Kentucky. So going into these both very difficult games, might add. They're going to be difficult, probably a lot more difficult than Georgia and Athens. Luckily, you have home court advantage, if that's what it's called in volleyball. What do you look forward to against these ranked opponents? You want to see some improvement, of course, but you want to beat this number 3 ranked Kentucky team and really make a statement for volleyball this season.
Yeah, you want to beat them both. You want to beat Kentucky, you want to beat Tennessee. You want to get, what my thing is you want to get out of the rhythm of going 1-1 every single week. State is going 1-1, I believe, every single week of conference play when they've played 2 games. You look at last week, this previous week, beat South Carolina, lose to Georgia. So there's a 1-1, right? You had another week, you beat Ole Miss, you lose to Texas A&M. You've had that for really the entire conference slate. These are some big games coming up. As you mentioned, Kentucky, a very good team, number 3 in the country, has beat some ranked teams that are not easy to beat. Definitely will have our hands full. You'll have your hands full against Tennessee. I look for, you remember that A&M match? We got swept 3-0. But that last set where we were very, very competitive in that last set.
It was a push, that set.
Exactly. Very competitive in that last set. And my thing with that is I think you need to find whatever you had working for you in that set against a team of that caliber, which Kentucky and Tennessee are teams of that caliber, like Texas A&M. I think you need to find what you had working for you in that. Find what you had working for you, obviously, in the South Carolina match, right? Had the great hit percentage, which you've struggled to have good hit percentages against ranked teams. You got to have a little bit of luck involved with that, too, because these are two very good teams, so you got to have a little bit of luck on your side. Continue to have some great production around the roster. Lindsey Mangelson, have her continue to be big. She's been big all season. Look forward to seeing her playing for the coming years for Mississippi State. It's going to take a lot to beat these two teams. You just got to play, go out there, play your best volleyball. Hopefully we can do that. Hopefully we can replicate the things we've done to be able to beat some other teams that we've beaten this season. Look forward to those two matches this week.
Well, if you're Mississippi State fans, you have a lot of opportunity coming up with conference play and volleyball before the season ends to go support the Bulldogs. So please do that. But let's talk about another game that had good fan attendance. The Pink Out game against Vanderbilt in soccer last weekend. You didn't do too well against Vandy. You're down 5-1 against the 21-ranked Vanderbilt Commodores. You don't have Allie Perry for this game. But you do follow it up with a win against Alabama in Tuscaloosa. You do win that 1-0. So if you notice in the Vandy loss, you saw it firsthand, Ty. You were there. You were part of that attendance. But when you were able to fix those mistakes and actually beat a team like Alabama, what did you notice throughout this weekend of soccer?
Well, Vanderbilt game obviously didn't go your way. 4 first-half goals for Vanderbilt in the contest. At that point when we got to the second half, it just wasn't quite – you just couldn't really do anything. I mean, Vanderbilt came out firing, and they played really well offensively. State couldn't have any success. It felt like that entire first half, Vanderbilt was in on Mississippi State's side of the field. And you have the goal in the second half for MSU, but Vanderbilt was able to counter with a goal of their own to continue or to make it a 4-point or a 4-goal game again. So Vanderbilt one, it was just a struggle. Vanderbilt played really well, probably the best played game they've had all season, especially offensively. So now we switch into Bama. You're at a point coming into this Alabama game where you've lost 3 games in a row. You've lost to now Vanderbilt, who was this week, or the game before. You lost to Florida, and you lost to Arkansas. In those 3 games, you have given up 11 goals. That is just not going to cut it for Mississippi State. So we see Jenny Harrison come in, and she was the goalie in that game for Mississippi State, her first career start, and she gets the shutout against the SEC's top-scoring offense in Alabama, had 8 saves, which is the most by any MSU keeper this season. She played really well, was big for the Bulldogs. Zoe Main had the long goal in the ball game for Mississippi State. Good to have her continuing to be an offensive presence. You had Allie Perry. She did well in that one as well. What I just want to say is great to have such an elite defensive performance after a struggle in the last 3. 11 goals in those 3 losses to Vanderbilt, Florida, and Arkansas. It was great to see you had some defensive success, which is what State prided itself on last season, was defensive success. And they had that against Alabama, did a great job in that one. Was close there at the end. I was really, really nervous there at the end, but State did a good job of persevering, and one more game to go until the SEC tournament.
Well, let's talk about that. Keep that in mind for defensive success with their performance. But let's go to the last game and the last home game of the season. It's against Georgia on Saturday here in Starkville. Georgia's no longer ranked after a 1-1 draw against Auburn in Athens this past weekend. Georgia, 9-3-5 overall. They're 5-1-3 in conference, and their away games, they're 3-1-2. So what does State need to do? We talk about defensive success. I mean, I'm sure they'll bring in that goalie again as well for this Georgia game? I mean, you have to, right?
Yeah, I think you'll see a lot more of her maybe for the rest of the season. You come in your first career start in your collegiate career, and you're able to have a shutout, and not only a shutout, but against the best scoring offense in the SEC. Yeah, I think you'll see a lot more of her. You look at Georgia; they're really similar to Mississippi State. Now State doesn't have near as many draws as Georgia does. They have 5 of those, but that just shows that Georgia's a very competitive team, right? They're going to do whatever it takes to at least persevere a draw. A draw, obviously, you want to win, but you don't want to lose. That means so much in terms of points in standings when in the SEC. So I think these are 2 similar teams. It's Mississippi State who's trying to fight for a higher tournament seed. It's Georgia who's trying to fight for a higher tournament seed. Mississippi State has a pretty good RPI overall. This is a Mississippi State team, too, that's fighting to try and host again for the NCAA tournament. A lot on the line in this game. It'll be senior night for Mississippi State, so definitely some emotions in that as well. Hopefully the Bulldogs can get it done. This will be a very interesting match, and look forward to that game against Georgia.
Let's put it on the table. Let's make it clear, cut, and dry. This is for a bye in the SEC tournament. If we look at the SEC tournament, it starts next week on November 2nd in Pensacola, Florida. This is how the standings look for the SEC. Ty mentioned it earlier. This is an important game. Arkansas is number 1. Vandy's number 2. You have Georgia at 3. We mentioned they're 9-3-5 overall and 5-1-3 in the conference. You have Tennessee 5-2-2 in the conference at 4. And then you have dear old Mississippi State 5-3-1 at number 5 in the conference. If you are top 4 and you can become top 4 in the SEC, you get a bye week in Pensacola. So Ty, you beat Georgia. You not only ensure a bye week, but if you can somehow get Tennessee to lose against Alabama, you'll be the 3rd seed in the tournament, and it'll be a good showing, I think, for Mississippi State.
Yeah, a game off will be huge. And the thing is too, you can manage however you want to travel, however you want to. You can have a day where you go to Pensacola and you go watch some soccer, right? You can stay here in Starkville and watch some soccer at home. It doesn't matter. That's the flexibility of having the first game off, is that you can do that and you can afford to do that. It'll be big. I mean, obviously, we've just previewed this the entire time we've been talking about this Georgia game. This is big for both teams in order to stay in the top 4 of the SEC, and that'll loom large in the heads of these players. So yeah, this is big for both teams. A bye will be huge for any team. Whoever wins this, hopefully it's Mississippi State that wins, and the thought of a bye in the SEC tournament definitely going to be in the minds of both of these teams coming into it. It'll be a hard-fought competitive game against 2 very similar soccer teams, and I look forward to that game on Sunday here in Starkville.
The implications of this last home game is definitely interesting. Definitely a lot on the line for soccer as they want to complete a good season here in Starkville. But let's go to where the bread and butter is. You go to Gainesville this past Saturday to play the Florida Gators, none other than the Florida Gators. And a lot of controversy loomed at that last bit of the game. We'll get into that, but you couldn't handle business. You came into Florida as 9.5-point underdogs, and you lost 23-21 with a big crucial mistake in the 4th quarter. Now, Billy Napier, he's done in Florida. Ty, what are your overall thoughts on the game? Can you talk a little bit about Billy Napier as yourself? Because we talked about it last week. You don't perform well against this Mississippi State team, you might be gone from Florida, and that is exactly what happened.
Yeah, I mean, I think either way, he was probably going to be gone, even if he won, if he lost, whatever they look like. I just feel like either way they were wanting to move on with him. But that's enough about him. But hey, we talked about it last week too. Another open coaching job in college football just excites me for the coaching carousel we'll have in the offseason. But anyway, State loses the game 23-21. We're going to talk about that 4th quarter mistake at the end of the ball game that ultimately lost the game for State. But I want to talk about the first half first. He had 7 drives offensively in the first half, Mississippi State did. 5 of them ended in Florida territory. You went into the halftime with only 7 points, only 1 score with 5 drives ending in Florida territory. You had a missed field goal in one of those drives. You had a fumble in one of those drives. You had a failed 4th down conversion on one of those drives, which struck a lot of controversy with the play calling. You kept Kamario Taylor in for a couple of quarterback runs, and then you bring in Blake Shapen to do the same exact play.
Quarterback run.
Yeah, and you didn't gain the 1st down. So a lot of controversy involved in that. So that was kind of the first half. Also a thing too in the first half, we did a good job of. Our wide receivers did a great job of getting open, especially Brendan Thompson and Anthony Evans III. Both were wonderful in the game, 18 catches combined between the two for 262 yards. And there were some touchdowns that could have been had for some of them. I mean, Brendan Thompson had a missed, or Blake Shapen missed on a couple of big throws is what I'm trying to get to in that first half that really could have put State out in front by a large margin, and we weren't able to hit on some big throws that were open. One that was wide open to Brendan Thompson in the end zone, had nobody around him. Another one that he had the defender beat in the end zone, and he just threw it to the inside instead of letting it fly to the outside. Ended up getting Thompson hit, and the ball broke loose. So we had some missed throws from Shapen in the first half to some open receivers for Mississippi State that ultimately State couldn't capitalize on any of those opportunities. So a lot of missed opportunities in the first half. Second half, you didn't start the way you needed to offensively. Your defense got you 2 stops on the first drives, or the first 2 drives for Florida in the second half, and you didn't start the way you needed to. You also did the same thing as Florida. You punted the football. And I thought, just talking about defense, I thought they overall played fairly well. Florida had a good bit of yards. The stats were very similar in the game. I thought the pass defense was really good for Mississippi State. Forced 2 interceptions in key moments. That's another thing, too, is State's defense, again, making plays, and the offense just couldn't capitalize on them. A lot of rush yards in the game, which I thought was an issue. State's rush defense has, if I had to put a word for it, I'd say spotty this season.
Inconsistent.
Yeah, so they gave up a good bit to Jaden Ball for Florida, and they gave up really just a lot of rush yards to what was not a very deep running back room coming into the game for Florida. So got something?
I want to pick on something you said earlier, because you said that this game was it looked super similar. And if you look at it, if the score wasn't telling enough, 23-21, look at these identical stats, Ty. Both teams, State and Florida, 2 turnovers apiece, 30 minutes and 5 seconds time of possession for State, 29 minutes and 55 seconds time of possession for Florida, 468 total yards of offense for State, 452 total yards of offense for Florida. Both teams had 7 penalties for 60 yards to tag with those penalties. Identical stats. I mean, we were almost seeing a mirrored game of each Florida and Mississippi State this past weekend.
Yeah, I mean, but I think more of that is State's fault. I don't think It's
definitely not a good thing to say.
I just don't think, State, obviously anybody's going to look at this and say this, so this is a popular take here, but State just didn't play their best ball. There were many opportunities in the game for State to take advantage. You could make a case that State should have had at least 21 points offensively in the first half, especially with that many drives ending in Florida territory, and you did nothing with them except for one of them, and that was the first drive of the game. You had so many opportunities, and it was throughout the game. You had so many opportunities. Missed passes, right? You just couldn't extend drives. I thought you did fairly well on third down. I thought you did fairly well on first down. I thought the offensive line played a little bit better than I thought they would coming into the game.
Especially on the run, man.
Exactly.
Xavier Gayton on that.
Exactly.
Game,
now Gayton was pretty
strong.
Gayton was pretty explosive, but he was responsible for the fumble.
You're right.
In that one drive that we failed to score. So, everybody kind of did some things wrong, obviously, and that's just going to happen with any football game. Everybody's going to have something they need to correct. But it was just too much for State to be able to win the game. And, we had the one big mistake that Mississippi State made that ultimately lost in the game, and we want to talk about that.
Yeah,
let's
talk about it, because you struggled, you made mistakes. But let me set the scene for you just real quick. 29 seconds are left of the ball game in the fourth quarter. You had the previous offensive drive and in the fumble by Xavier Gayton. We talked about it. It was almost like a ghost fumble. He just fumbled out of thin air, it felt like. But Jeff Lebby calls his final timeout. He elects to use it, and after a 0-yard gain from Blake Shapen on 1st and 10, you're in Florida territory on the 29-yard line, and you're well within, might I add, Kyle Ferry's field goal range. I mean, you saw him hit a 50-plus yard field goal, 55-plus yard field goal almost against Southern Miss at the season opener. So, look, you could go ahead and win this game. You could run it a couple times, get a little bit farther down the field, call your final timeout, and kick the field goal. But remember, it's 23-21. That's the score. And instead of trying to get a couple more yards running the ball, Jeff Lebby says, you know what? I think I'm going to pass it. And everything that could have went wrong for Mississippi State went wrong. The exact thing you don't want to happen when you elect to pass the ball in this type of situation. You throw a pick if you're Blake Shapen to an arm-extended, big old defensive lineman for Florida. Ty, kind of keep it low just a little bit. I know watching that, we were both a little flustered, especially with the play calling. I didn't like that you called your timeout super early with 30 seconds left. I wish you would have used it right before the field goal attempt to go ahead and win the game. Tell me your thoughts about that. We can go back and forth, but what you think about that when you saw it?
So my thing, and it's been a talking point within the Mississippi State fan base, is should he have passed the ball? Should he have run the ball? Should we have been conservative and just kicked the field goal from the 29-yard line? I don't mind the decision to try and advance the football. You always want to have a easier field goal for your field goal kicker to win the football game. In that scenario, you want to have an easier field goal. I don't mind the decision to advance the ball, especially when you had one timeout after the first down you gained. Now, on first down, what I would have done differently is I would have run the football. That's just me. And,
I agree.
There's a reason why Jeff Lebby made the decision to pass the football. That's his reason. I'm just giving my opinion. I would have ran the football. I think you could have called a timeout. You don't know how far you get down the field. You could have scored. But here's the thing with not throwing the football. Now, I get you can also come back at me and say that you could have fumbled the football if you ran the ball. But I think you take a lot of risk out of the air, no pun intended, with not throwing the football. You don't risk the interception. If you have Booth in there, that's a guy that doesn't fumble the football very much. You let him run the football, gain however much, and get up the field and go. I just think you should have ran the football there, keep it on the ground, right? You had the timeout in your pocket, run it on first down, call the timeout whenever you want to, set it, get it where Kyle Ferry's comfortable with, and kick it and go win the game. That's what I thought should have happened. Now, outside of that, there were a lot of things too that factored into the 23-21 score, right? You had earlier in the game in the first half, you missed a field goal, which was a very questionable missed field goal. A lot of State fans, including me, thought it went right over the upright. That's what I thought. I thought he made the field goal. So if it's that, then the drive before that touchdown drive would have given you the lead at that point in the game, 24-23. It didn't. They called it a missed field goal. You also had in one of Florida's drives, their last scoring drive, Zachary Tillman with a couple of crucial penalties that got Florida in the field goal range and kept the drive alive for the Gators. So a couple crucial penalties there. That's more mistakes that give Florida an advantage. And I don't want to leave this last bit of the game without talking about the defense standing up to Florida's offense. Florida got it to 3rd down and 1. Now, what I thought was questionable was Florida's decision to throw the ball on 3rd down and 1 with a guy in Jaden Ball who had ran for 150 yards in the game. That's beyond me. Again, I'm not making the play calls. But State able to stop the pass on 3rd down and 1. Our defense gets the football back. We did our job. We drove down the field. Just couldn't execute. And that you can blame that on play calling. You can blame that on the throw, whatever. It was a great play made by the defensive lineman for the Florida Gators. It's overall just a frustrating loss, and not even that you threw a pick to end the game and lose the game, but that you had so many opportunities in the football game to win, and that's just kind of what has been a sting in my heart, is just thinking about how many opportunities you had to win that football game and you just weren't able to do it. And, definitely going to be thinking about that one for a while. Can't think about it too much because you got a big game coming up this weekend at homecoming.
I want to point something out before we I don't want to end it on a bad note. I kind of want to end it on kind of an uplifting note. You had a whole game to win you had a whole game to beat Florida. But, you can say, like, hey, I thought play calling was questionable. I thought a lot of decisions made by the coaching staff were definitely questionable. Blake Shapen had over a 300-yard passing game, and that's something that we haven't seen in a while by Shapen.
You had receivers get open, and they should have, as Florida had a lot of defensive backs out, but they did their job. They got open. Like I said, I thought the offensive line played fairly well in that game. You were able, though, too, we talked about it last week, be able to sustain drives. We might not have really big-time won time of possession, but we were able to get sustain drives and get them in the Florida territory, and we had chances to score. I think we were able to do that. You had receivers get open. I thought Shapen was good in his intermediate passing game, short and intermediate. I thought he was, obviously he just missed on a couple of deep balls. There were some bright spots. Your defense played well, got 2 interceptions, gave you chances to win the football game, obviously with the final stop on during their final time on the football field. I think there were a lot of positive in this game. You can look at that. You have to look at that in order to sort of stay positive and be able to move on to the next week. But, you just look at it too, and also you had so many opportunities to win, Connor, and you just couldn't get it done.
With mistakes left on the field, let's go to this weekend. You play homecoming. It's homecoming week for Mississippi State against the number 22 ranked Texas Longhorns, coming to Davis Wade Stadium. Now, it's the 86th homecoming game for Mississippi State, and the last time you play Texas was 1991, right, Ty?
1991. Last time you played Texas at home.
At home, excuse me.
You played them last year and lost to them at Texas. But the last time you played them at home, you beat them 13-6. Sleepy Robinson with a touchdown in that ball game. A couple field goals for the Bulldogs as well. You beat the number 13 Longhorns in Starkville in Jackie Sherrill's second game as the Bulldog head coach.
Ty, did you know this stat right here? Now, Mississippi State is 14 out of 15 the past 15 homecoming games, and that last loss came in 2023. I was a freshman here, ringing a cowbell in the stands instead of being in the press box like we usually are. Kentucky beat us 24-3 in that homecoming game, and State is 59-23-3 for their homecoming record. So we're previewing this game before we kind of get specific offense and defense, what they need to do. What do you think your overall thoughts going into this game are going to be? Because I think we're going to be ringing cowbells in the stands before this game.
Yeah, I think so too. You look at Texas, right, number 22 in the country, 5-2 overall, 2-1 in the SEC. A win last week in Lexington, 16-13 in overtime. And it's a Kentucky team that's without an SEC win this season. They played some close games against some SEC teams. Had a close one against Ole Miss earlier in the season, but they bring Texas to overtime in that game. Very interesting. You look at coming into the season what Texas was thought out to be, and that was a national championship contender. And there's been a lot of question marks around that offense, around Arch Manning, and just
supposed to be a Heisman.
Exactly.
candidate.
He was a Heisman hopeful coming into this season. Everybody had him on their radar, and he just, for lack of a better term, has underperformed this season. So definitely an interesting final score there in Lexington. Interesting thing about that, too, they got outgained in the ball game, 395 yards to 179.
And that's a testament to Texas defense.
Exactly. Texas defense, one of the best in the country, 12th overall in total defense in all of college football. It's a defense that has a ton of athletes on its team. And you go back to that Kentucky game, like I mentioned, the being outgained that drastically in yards. Only 8 first downs in the game. Only 8 first downs in the game. I'll say that again. You only scored 1 touchdown in the game, and you had 3 field goals, and you were 5 for 16 on third down. Offensive line play was not very good in the game. Arch Manning, we talked about him, 12 for 27. They only rushed it for 47 yards. Kentucky had 7 hurries and 3 sacks. Just speaks, further to how the offensive line play has struggled for Texas this year. But their defense bailed them out again. That's just what happened. Their defense bailed them out again. That's what happened in the win in the Red River rivalry. Try and say that 3 times fast against Oklahoma. Defense,
good Oklahoma team.
Yeah, a good Oklahoma team. Defense helped them in there. So when you look at Texas, it's the defense that's the key, and that's kind of similar to the Florida game, right? The defense is what's the key for this team. The offense has struggled. That's what it was last week for Florida. That's what it is this week for Texas.
And that is really becoming the story for us as well. Offensively, Texas is underperformed. Defense is what you got to look out for. But if you look at it, Texas, their defense couldn't do much against Florida. I mean, they got outscored 29-21 on October 4th, so we both have a Florida loss on our resume. But, you know, we talked about how explosive this Mississippi State offense can be. You talked about Blake Shapen missing deep balls that he has to have. I know it touched Brendan Thompson's fingertips a time or two just because it was slightly overthrown, but you also got to look at Mississippi State leads the nation with 14 40-plus yard plays. Do you know who's number 2, Ty? Florida State. And they have 12. So with that kind of gap between first and second place, I know 2 plays, you say, well, that's not much, Connor, but it really is. 40-plus yard plays are hard to come by. You didn't really see it against Florida because Blake Shapen was missing a couple deep balls. But how do you unlock it against this Texas defense to ensure that you are 15 for 16 in the past 16 homecoming games?
It's gonna be very tough. This is a Texas team with athletes all over the place, and not just in the defensive back region and the secondaries. Colin Simmons is an edge for Texas. Man, what a player he is. And you talk about the pass game and being able to open up downfield. Well, first you got to have pass protection, right? And Colin Simmons is a game wrecker. He is going to wreck this game. He's going to have at least a sack in this ball game, but you've got to limit him beyond 1 sack. Can't have more than 1 sack in the game. Texas wasn't ranked preseason, I believe, number 1 in preseason or number 2. They weren't preseason top 5. I'll just say that to save me. They weren't preseason top 5 for no reason. They have a lot of talent on this team. Now, things haven't come quite to fruition offensively, and that's been the reason they've dropped 2 games and they're at number 22. But the defense is big time for Texas. That's a big reason why they were preseason top 5. They got a lot of talent there. Like I mentioned, 12th overall in total defense. And when you get into the red zone too, tough to score against them. 11th in red zone defense. It's tough to score from them or score on them all over the field. It's gonna be tough to score on them in the red zone. It's just gonna be tough to score on them in general. You got to be able to scheme against them the right way. Do some things that are able to open up Brendan Thompson and Anthony Evans. They've got a lot of speed. Utilize that. Be able to run the football the way you have been over the past over the season, really. Hopefully we can get Fluff Bothwell back in. That would be big for the running back depth for Mississippi State. Be able to run the ball. That can open up your pass game. It'll be interesting to see, now that we saw him for a couple more plays. He even scored a touchdown for State last game. Interesting to see how State uses Kamario Taylor, which has been a hot topic with the fan base for MSU. So we'll see how we use him. See how you got to use Brendan Thompson and Anthony Evans. Obviously, they're vital to the success of your offense. Be able to run the football the right way and protect Blake Shapen, give him some time, and hopefully Shapen, if the pocket is collapsing, can get out of the pocket and be able to throw the ball away or maybe make some plays on the run.
I agree. You need to command the game with running the ball, and that's something that we've seen that needs to be established. And Jeff Lebby tries to get cute, wants to pass. You can pass the ball all you want. You got to make sure, I think me and both of us can say this and attest to this, Blake Shapen has a problem with holding onto the ball a little too long. And as well as your receivers can get open, I think that's why we saw 300-plus passing yards from Florida. They did a good job of getting open, but he's got to be able to get the ball out.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, he has. He's struggled with being able to, you always have, as a quarterback, you have a clock in your head, and, you got to have a clock in your head against a defensive line like this. You got to be able to get the ball out or either, do something to get out of the pocket, throw the football away, something like that. He has struggled with that this season. You got to do it here because this is, like I mentioned, this is probably outside of maybe A&M, but they might even be better than A&M. This is the best defensive line you've faced all season. And what's important, though, is that you have Albert Reese, who was healthy last week and played last week, meant a lot to the offensive line last week, and he's going to be back this week. Important to have him. He's a staple on that offensive line. Hopefully he can, help out the rest of the guys there, had that role of the leadership role on that offensive line, being the senior that he is. It'll be big to have him. But yeah, gotta be able to protect him. But Blake, gotta have that clock in your head. I think you're going to be able to get some guys open over the middle of the field. I think we were able to do that against Florida. Now, granted, Florida had a diminished secondary, but I think we're going to be able to do that. I think this is a fully healthy Brennan Thompson, who, in that A&M game, I'm not quite sure that he was fully healthy, right? So I think you got to be able to utilize him, utilize Anthony Evans, utilize Seydou Traore a little bit more, because I think he can be a game changer as well. And he just hasn't been able to be used as much in the SEC play. So we'll see how that goes. But offense is going to have their hands full. We'll talk about the defense here.
Yeah, they used Traore a lot for that first drive for tight end. But if you look at Mississippi State's defense, we talk about how good Texas defense can be and will be against Mississippi State, so you really need to protect Blake Shapen if Lebby does decide to pass the ball a lot. Through 7 games this season, Mississippi State's defense has not allowed a first quarter touchdown on offense, of course. 12 turnovers last season. You get to this year, you have 13. Now you are leading the conference with 10 interceptions forced this year. Now that's tied 6th nationally. And Texas is ranked 13th behind State in passing offense in the SEC. They're 68th nationally, and State's passing defense is ranked 31st nationally and 5th in the SEC. So that's a really good thing to point out for State. If you can force turnovers, if you can force interceptions, if you can do something to allow Texas to pass the ball the majority of the time, I think that's a winning formula for you to go ahead and try to get another homecoming win. Make it 60 homecoming wins for your all-time homecoming record.
I tell you what, watch Kentucky and how they dominated the run game defensively. Watch Kentucky, and that's how you win. Kentucky they were all over the place. Did a really good job just stuffing Texas, pushed their offensive line back. You can argue that on paper, that Texas defensive line is nowhere near what Texas' offensive line should be, right? And it didn't look like that at all. They played really well. Kentucky usually has a good defense. They did in that ball game, like I mentioned earlier, only 47 rushing yards for Texas. You mentioned being able to force them to pass the ball. State, like I mentioned earlier, has been a little spotty when it comes to rush defense, right? State did well in the early parts of the Tennessee game, and then late in the Tennessee game, it was Tennessee who started to have success. And that last touchdown drive for Tennessee had a lot of success running the football. Obviously, the first play of overtime, they scored on a 25-yard touchdown. There's been some times where State has struggled with their rush defense. Got to be able to create havoc with that. And if you're able to force them to pass the ball like you were talking about, it's a pass offense that struggled. Manning 12 for 27 in the game, and a lot of that deals with Texas their pass protection has not been very good at all this season either. So if you can force some pressure on Arch Manning, get to him, be able to make him make some bad decisions. You have athletes on this team that are going to make interceptions. They've done it in every game this season. Haven't allowed a first quarter touchdown at all this season, as you mentioned. This is a big time. This is where the game will be won. If Texas's offense can have any sort of success at all, it's going to be really tough for Mississippi State to win. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think Mississippi State defense is going to stand tall. I don't think this is a good Texas offense at all. I think State's defense is going to have a field day with them. I think it could be a low-scoring game because these are two excellent defenses in both the national ranks and in conference ranks. So I think this will be a defensive game. State's got a great opportunity at hand, a ranked team coming in, right, a preseason national championship favorite, a homecoming game. You'll have all your alumni back. A big-time game for Mississippi State, and you're looking for that first SEC win since 2023.
Exactly. I was just going to point that out. It could be your first conference win in a very long time. I mean, we need this more than anything, but I think what you have to do is you have to stack the box. And I noticed when I watched Coleman Hutzler's defense, he likes to move the second level out into the flats, and that's where you get those big chunk run plays because there's nobody in the midfield of that second level to be able to get to that running back.
I thought he did some good things when we were pass rushing. You saw a lot of exotic stuff from Mississippi State when we did pass rush. Brought a lot of different types of pressure. I liked kind of what I saw. He's been a lot more exotic this season,
yeah,
and I think he's been freed up by the athletes that we now have on this defense for MSU. But yeah, you're right. I think you got to load the box a little bit more, get some pressure on Arch. Nothing's told me this season that he's going to make that great of decisions. I think you can force some interceptions, give your offense some extra possessions. It's just your offense has got to capitalize on those turnovers that I think will come against this Texas offense.
And Arch Manning does show up against big games, but is the Mississippi State homecoming game big enough for Arch Manning to do some damage for Mississippi State's defense? That's going to do it for us today for the second episode of the Bulldog Breakdown. We thank you for coming and watching and supporting us. If you did please like, comment, subscribe, share with all your friends. We'll be back next week for some more football, volleyball, and soccer. It's been the Bulldog Breakdown presented by the Bulldog Student Sports Network. We'll catch you next time.